The 2024 NFL draft is literally just 2 weeks away, but it doesn't feel like it's 2 weeks away. The excitement surrounding the Saints doesn't feel the same. What's the reason for it? Let's discuss it right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Vogel, and as always, we're brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook and Scott McNair Injury Lawyers. You may injure any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, hurt offshore. Scott McNair handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. So, as I mentioned, the NFL draft is literally about 2 weeks away. It's 2 weeks in a day, but at this point, it's really 2 weeks away. And normally, there's a lot of excitement surrounding the draft for the Saints. Some of it might be negatively charged. Some of it might be positively charged. Some might be delusional about who they want in New Orleans. Some might be adamant that this has to be the pick, whatever it may be. It doesn't feel like that anymore. It doesn't. And normally, if I'm going to come on here and have a podcast, it's relatively news-based. I know I can get very, I don't want to use the word emotional, but I can have a lot of fan-charged rants on this show, particularly during the season, right? On a Sunday after the game when we have our live streams, and I can't wait to do those again. Those are predominantly fan-charged. Then during the offseason, try to kind of keep it news-based because it's the offseason. It's a time where, like, if there is ever a time to be optimistic and think about good things for your team, regardless of the sport, it's the off season because the season is not there. It's off. Hence the word. Not when it comes to the Saints. Now, I have been very critical of the Saints regime the last couple of years. I've tried my best to refrain from being so negative this offseason because it's the offseason. But something hit me yesterday, and I was like, you know what? I kind of have to go on a little bit of a rant. And instead of give you one of those podcasts where I'm talking about news or who the pick has to be or who whatever it may be, I've decided to go with more so what I'm feeling. And over the last couple of days, last couple of weeks, just analyzing just where the Who Dat Nation's at, when you kind of take a pulse about who they may want to pick, who they don't want to pick, how they feel about the team, what I can say is there's not an ounce of excitement about the New Orleans Saints. And that breaks my heart. There is literally no arguments about who they should draft. And it's not because everyone's in agreement. It's because a lot of the Who Dat Nation doesn't give a crap. And that, to me, is an indictment on what in just 3 years' time, Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis have managed to do to a team that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, a lot of fans, outside of maybe Patriots fans because they've been kind of spoiled with championships, would say, man, that is a standard of what you want your team to look like. Look at the New Orleans Saints constantly winning 12 games, 11 games, 13 games. The Saints aren't winning the games, and they're not interesting at all. And I think they're in a place right now where as we go into the draft, and we know they pick 14, and they could get a really good player at 14. There's no doubt about it. Where is the excitement? Now, if we look at the draft aspect for the Saints, they haven't necessarily been great in the first round. I know Olave's really good, but Trevor Penning, what'd you get there? Are we sure about that? Peyton Turner, not ideal. Ruiz, okay, nothing special. Davenport, do we go there? Not sure. If you guys want to, we can, but I don't think it's worth the time. So as we get to the draft, yeah, the Saints get a good player. I know they got an Olave. Brazil last year, really good pick. Was excited about that. But it just feels like fans are checked out. And I understand it. It's hard to really be committed to a product that you've already sold yourself out on. Like I've said this before, and this is not football related, but I told people, and I'm not blaming people if they like this movie, but when I saw The Last Jedi and then Rise of Skywalker back to back, I didn't like either one. And I told myself, I was like, you know what? Instead of me sitting here complaining about the product nonstop and saying, oh, Star Wars stinks, Star Wars that, I'm just going to stop watching because I'm not interested. And I've kind of done that. I know a lot of people like Mandalorian, a lot of people like Andor, whatever it may be, and they'll say, have you watched it? And I said, I just didn't. And it's not that I'm just so anti-Star Wars. It's like at this point, I've seen too much And I've been so turned off that, I don't know if I'm going to have a clear mind. So on Tuesday, I asked people, if the Saints draft Olu Fashanu from Penn State, how would you feel? And I thought we'd get a lot of, not the sexy pick, but the right pick. I thought I'd get, no, I want an offensive weapon. A lot of people said, wouldn't give a shit. And I think when you reach that point for a fan base, I don't know if there's a point of return. And what I mean by is there's no point of return for the current regime. And to bring it back to movies, yeah, I haven't liked Star Wars the last couple of years, maybe 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it may be. If I see that there's changes, if they bring a different mind in that I like from a directorial standpoint, I may watch. That might pique my interest. And I think with the Saints, we've reached this point where until Dennis Allen's out, until Mickey Loomis kind of accepts accountability, I don't know if that'll ever happen. That might be, far from ever happening. People will not care. And the worst part about it is there's only two ways you could change people's mind. You make changes, but if that happens, it doesn't happen until January. So Saints fans are pretty much having to go through May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, just to get to that glorious moment in January where they look at their phones and get a notification. Dennis Allen's been fired. But that's a long time. And the other side of the spectrum is they win and they defy the odds. But you can't literally show me this roster and say that that's going to happen. And what I mean by that is I think the Saints can be competitive next season. I think there are games that they could win. I think they could stay in a lot of these games. But then I look at the roster and just hear me out. They are good at two position groups. They are really good at cornerback with Lattimore, with Adebo, with Alontae Taylor, even bringing back Ugo Amadi, and really good at linebacker. Demario Davis, Pete Werner had a down season, but I like that they brought in Willie Gay. So they got some depth there. So they're really good at cornerback, and I think they're good at linebacker. Now let's talk about the rest of the roster. Running back, it is a room that is mediocre, borderline old, not loving it. Tight end, not a great room. In fact, I'd say that's a really bad room. That might be one of the biggest weaknesses that doesn't get talked about with the Saints is how mediocre at best this tight end room is. So no running backs, no tight ends that you love. I like Alvin, but they don't even utilize Alvin, right? And Kendra Miller, I really like his potential, but he's never healthy. Jamal Williams literally did nothing for the Saints. Wide receiver, young, talented. Are they ready for the moment? I think Olave is. I think Shaheed is getting there. Is A.T. Perry ready for the moment? If not, maybe you need a receiver to add in the draft. So that is a question mark. Safeties. Tyrann Mathieu can still play. What are you getting across from him? We have no idea. Special teams. I don't think they have a punter. Actually, I know they don't have a punter because, God, I didn't think Lou Hedley was good. And Blake Grupe, yeah, he made some kicks. He also missed some in the 20-yard range. So what, as fans, are we supposed to expect? That's a question mark for special teams. And then let's get into the big ones. Your quarterback is kind of the definition of mid, to put it the best way possible. And even if I would say he has his good days, I don't think Derek Carr is the type of quarterback that elevates a bad team. Like, I know if I stick Joe Burrow on the Bengals and they started off poorly, he gets them to be good. I know if I stick Lamar on the Ravens, no matter the circumstances, they're going to be good. I know if I stick Josh Allen on the Bills, no matter the circumstances, they're going to find a way to win games. Derek Carr can have moments where he's good, and I thought there, especially in the last 5 games of the season, there were a lot of moments where he looked good, but he doesn't elevate a team. He's not that guy. So, question at quarterback. How can he elevate the team? I don't think he can. But the bigger question marks and the biggest concerns, the Saints aren't good enough in the trenches. Their O-line is abysmal right now. You don't have a right tackle. You don't have a left tackle. You don't have a left guard. So outside of a center and a right guard, you have nothing in the trenches. So how can you build a running game off having nothing in the trenches? How can you protect your quarterback who isn't mobile and doesn't want to get hit when you don't have good enough players in the trenches? That is a question mark. How about the defensive line? Yes, Brian Brzee, great. Carl Granderson, great. What do you have outside of them? Cam Jordan, getting older, on the decline. Chase Young had neck surgery. Are we sure he's going to play a game for the Saints? We hope he does. I'd like to see him really bounce back and find a long-term home in New Orleans. So, you know what? At least there is that somewhat excitement for Chase Young because there is that possibility that happens, but there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee with Chase Young. Peyton Turner? If there's no guarantee with Chase Young, what the hell do we say about Peyton Turner? Because he's never on the field. So when you're not good enough in the trenches on the defensive line, you can't protect your quarterback. You can't establish a run game. Your quarterback isn't good enough. The weapons around him aren't good enough either. I think the Saints are grossly overrated when it comes to their skill players because I see so many people saying the pick at 14 has to be O-line. And I don't disagree with Saints fans who think that. Like, I think the Saints to get better in the O-line. But are we going to look at this skill group and act like it's that good? Because it's not. Olave's good. Shaheed's good. Alvin's good. What outside of that are you going to trust? We don't know what Taysom's role is going to be in a new offense. Juwan Johnson was really disappointing last year. Jamal Williams was really disappointing last year. Kendra Miller's never healthy. And A.T. Perry had some fun moments, but is he ready for the big time? So I think that all those question marks lead to a concern there. Defensively, yeah, I like your cornerbacks. What's behind them? Don't know. Special teams, that's a phase of the game. Don't really know. And it's not for me to sit here in, April and just bash the Saints to oblivion. But what I am telling you is the way this roster is constructed with the lack of a coaching staff, with the fact that they've been so subpar the last 3 seasons, leads me to believe we are heading down a road where I don't know if Saints football will be worth people's time until they make huge changes. And I did not even think that this was going to be a topic for me because I thought the fandom for the Who Dat Nation was going to win out. And I thought no matter how disappointing and how infuriating last season was, I thought Saints fans by March, by April, they'd be a little bit excited about the offseason. They talk about some moves, which this team barely made any. And they'd say, okay, this is how we rebuild the team. The time is now. And I'm telling you, no one cares. And I know I'm exaggerating when I say no one, but if I had to give a percentage of the Who Dat Nation right now that actually cares about the draft and actually thinks that this team can make some moves in April that's going to change the franchise for good, it is a very, very small percentage. And the majority of people right now are checked out. And I ask you this, if you get into September with this roster that's not very good, with this head coach that we know does not know how to coach, what happens if they start off 1-3? You're done. You lose the fans for the rest of the season. And again, this is not wishful thinking. I want to make that very clear. I want to be proven wrong. So in the long run, we can all enjoy successful Saints football. But I think there is this kind of sense of arrogance that it's going to get fixed. But it doesn't get fixed until you get your hands dirty, and this team refuses to get its hands dirty because they don't want to step on each other's toes. So we go into another year of this team not having a shot to win a Super Bowl, which also makes it disappointing, right? Because if you're not a rebuilding team, the flip side of it is you win now, right? And the Saints can win games now, but they can't win the big one. We know that. So Super Bowl's off the table. It's not Super Bowl or bust. It seems like it's NFC South or bust. And then you already lower the bar for a coach that, let's be real, goes over 500 but misses the playoffs, and it's like a Super Bowl to him because he doesn't know anything other than losing and being under 500. And I know that Saints fans will be around once the changes get made. I firmly believe that. But again, social media is not everything. So, engagement on social media is not everything. But I pay attention to whatever everyone else posts. I pay attention to the content that's being put out. And I think for a lot of people, the level of content hasn't changed, like the quality of it, the amount that they're putting out. Interest from fans has changed a little bit, and I think that they're just tired. I think that they're genuinely tired of this team. And with the NFL draft being 2 weeks away, the fact that I can say, should the Saints draft this guy? Should the Saints draft that guy? And most people just don't give a shit. That's exactly why I said the Saints had to make changes in January. But they didn't. They wanted to run this thing back. And you know what it gets you? It gets you a fan base that feels like they've watched too many seasons of a really bad TV show and say, I'm all right. I don't need to watch this season because I already know how it's going to go. So we shall see. Obviously, it's just April, but that's how it feels. And I think that is the unfortunate truth of the New Orleans Saints in the year 2024, is that the draft is almost around the corner, that this team can add young pieces, but in reality, how much can they change when so much is broken? And do the fans really care enough about pick 14 to erase the damage that's already been done in their minds by Mickey Loomis, by Dennis Allen? I think the answer is a resounding no. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that the Saints can be competitive this year, and I hope the Saints can be fun this year. But it's hard to have fun when there's no foundation that you can trust. It really is. So we'll see, guys. Maybe I'm really off here when it comes to this, but I don't think so. I really don't. And I think that it's only going to get worse as the next couple of months go on.
The thrill and excitement of March Mania is here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, is giving new customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets with any college basketball bet. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code BOOT. New customers can bet $5 to get $150 instantly in bonus bets, only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code BOOT. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/promos for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.
Again, maybe I'm wrong. And there are a lot of Saints fans out there that feel very, very invested still in the team and very invested in the draft, which is possible. And I've said this before. It's not me not caring about the team, but when people ask me, hey, who's your preference for the draft? I tell them I don't really care. It's not that I'm out on the Saints. I think this team has so many holes. So you can sit here and convince me that Olufushan, that Fuaga is the pick, or that Brock Bowers is the pick, or, that Brian Thomas Jr. is the pick, or that you believe they should move back, get A.D. Mitchell, or they need to get Dallas Turner and move up, or they need to get Latu from UCLA. You can convince me so many things because I think they need to get better in the pass rush. I think they need to get better at the skill position players. I think they need to get better at the O-line. So there are so many weaknesses on this team, and they didn't really address them in the offseason. And part of it is I think they finally were responsible with their money. And yes, that is a good thing. But the flip side of that would be you're literally a year removed from giving $150 million to a quarterback. So you're pretty much admitting that that was a mistake. That going to make that move to invest in a win now move and get Derek Carr in the building was a mistake because a year later, you're not spending any money and you're being financially responsible. If you went all in before, you're not going to go all in again. Like that to me kind of shows where they're at with this whole process. They said we kind of went all in. It didn't work. So we're going to try and work with what we have. And so be it. And I'm not going to hate on that move because I think that move leads to a finality of this Dennis Allen era. But it's kind of funny. And this is why we get to this point where I say, man, there are holes all over this roster. Right tackle, left tackle, defensive end, defensive tackle, safety. Don't even talk about that one a lot, but huge need at safety. Wide receiver, tight end, even running back needs to get better. So we'll see. And I don't mean to be so negative. I really don't. But it is frustrating where this team is at relative to other teams in this league. I mean, the Chicago Bears have excitement. The Washington Commanders have excitement. The Minnesota Vikings have excitement. And then we look around at the New Orleans Saints, and it is like a dead zone right now because there's nothing going on. Barely made moves in free agency. Yes, they got the draft. But it's also first pick, second pick. Oh, you're not picking until day 3. And it's like, well, goddamn, like that's a big gap. Now I expect them to move up, but I don't know. It doesn't feel the same. And that upsets me. It really does. The excitement right now is not there from the Who Dat Nation. But anyway, guys, am I off base here? Am I off base? Let me know in the comment section below. I'll definitely get back to you guys. I don't feel like I am. And this isn't supposed to be an attack on Mickey Loomis and Dennis Allen. I just feel like the intrigue surrounding this team has kind of waned in the last couple of months. So if I'm wrong, you let me know. If you agree, I guess also let me know so I don't feel a little lonely out here. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. So make sure to subscribe to Boot Crew Media to get more videos like this in the future. Obviously, more Pelicans content too, especially with the playoffs starting very, very soon in the NBA. And again, stay tuned for more from the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for